Hello, welcome to part 2 of our Bears Basics Guide. Reminder that this is game version 4.2. In this part, we're going to talk more about strategy and go over some basic game plan elements, which will build on the essential tools we already went over. We'll also suggest some players to check out and cap it off with a brief character summary. Don't forget about all the resource links I mentioned in part 1. Those may be very useful to you, especially if you are brand new to the game. I've included those once again in the video description below. But enough of that, let's get going. The Bears are obviously not the masters of stances, but there are still a couple to go over. We'll start with sit and roll since those are very simple. Sit, I'm going to advise you to just ignore. You'll rarely see it, main reasons being that it's not easy or fast to enter. It only has a couple of moves and those moves aren't particularly great. Wait until you gain some XP to try to throw that in. Roll, on the other hand, you'll see on occasion, although there still aren't a lot of options to remember. First, you don't have to do any of the built-in moves. If you just wait a moment, you'll recover in full crouch and you can do any of your full crouch moves or CC into a standing move. The built-in options are of course more fun. Roll 1 is your lone high, knockdown splat on hit, and a huge plus 15G on block. In the open, you also get a free down 1+2 on hit. Your lone low is roll 3, which is a heavy knockdown low. It is punishable, but only by a float combo, which some characters aren't very good at, and it's unparryable. On hit, the only thing technically guaranteed is a get up low kick. However, your Oki situation is such that at the very least you can stand and get a free mix up. But if they try to stand immediately, you can get some free hits. For example, if they backstand, you get an opportunity for a free down forward 2-1. So pretty solid low option. And then lastly, for your attacks, you have 3 mids to choose from. Roll 2 is the quickest, roughly the same speed as roll 3. So normally the go-to mix-up option unless you want to do some full crouch stuff. It's very unsafe, but will give you a full launch in return. Roll 4 is a safe, chunky leg flop, and roll 1+2 is your big launch roll. It has a huge active window, as does his other roll moves, by the way, so it can be as bad as -15 but as good as +1. However, because it leaves him on the ground, the worst you can expect is to take a grounded hit. You can try to stand, but because of the position, you may be exposing your back by doing that. Best just to take the ground hit and move on. And the last actual thing you can do from roll is go to bear stance. But the thing with roll is that it's not easy to get to because the stance startup isn't insanely fast or anything, so a quick mid poke can stop all your options. However, it is fast enough and the low profile gives enough surprise factor that you can sneak it in every once in a while, or you can try to use it at range where it'll be harder for a fast poke to get to you. Note that you don't really have a lot of transition options for it. It's literally just 4, 1+2 forward, full crouch down forward 1+2, hit bear 1-2 forward, and hit bear forward. Okay, now for bear stance. This is of course a more full-fledged stance. Like roll, it has a low profile which helps make it viable, but first your options. Bear stance 1-2 is probably your most common option because not only is it a low natural combo, but it's also your fastest option at I-12. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it does enough. If you want other low mix options, you have bear stance 2, which despite giving +20, you get nothing for free after. Then you have either bear stance back 1+2, which is an unparryable knockdown low, or bear stance forward 1+2, which is an unbreakable throw. Throw is really fun because you can always get a free down 1+2 after, but the Oki is such that if they try to stand, you can get a free down forward 2-1 instead. Regardless, both of those are the same speed at I-26, which should be noted is slow, so you do open yourself up to interrupts. And the only move that's roughly the same speed that you can really mix with those is bear stance 3+4. And although it can be safe at longer ranges thanks to the big active window, to use it as a mix-up tool, you'll need to be close, in which case it'll be -12. Moving on, bear stance down forward 1-1, down forward 2, and down 1+2 are your main faster options to mix with bear stance 1-2. Down forward 1-1 is a safe chunky natural combo but duckable. Down forward 2 is a very risky mid launcher, and down 1+2 is a chunky hop. Down 1+2 is the hardest to use since it goes back to bear stance at -9. In that situation, you still have the low profile of the bear stance to work with, but any low hitting mid 15 frames or faster should beat all of your options. So for example, in a mirror match, even though the Bears don't have an I-13 down forward 1, their down forward 2-1 should beat all options after blocking bear stance down 1+2. Even if you try to do one of the movement options, you'll still get floated. Speaking of, let's mention those quick. They're mostly for trickery, but you can go to sit, which actually has a hitbox. You can go to roll, which of course is forward. You can do a backwards roll. You can do both a forward and backward crawl. You can flop to the ground on your belly. You can roll over in either direction, or you can just stand up out of the stance. Couple of key notes with these. The forward crawl has an auto parry, which is really useful if they're trying to toe kick you out of bear stance or use some other similarly fast low to stop you. Also, if you decide to go to the ground, note that you have some typical fatty options. On your belly, you have a knockdown low, and belly up, you have 2 knockdown mids. 1+2 will swing up towards your head, down 1+2 will swing down by your feet. In any case, they aren't super scary, just some tricky stuff you can throw in there. The auto low parry on the walk is probably the most useful of that bunch. The hard part about bear stance is figuring out how to use it. Since you can't block if someone is always swinging at it, you're forced into just a couple of options. For highs, you can just chill and wait for the high to whiff. For mids, you can use the power crush, which can also be an answer to highs. Or for lows, use the auto low parry on the walk. You can also try bear stance 1+2 in the hopes that they'll use a high or high hitting mid you can sneak under. 1-2 can be useful for stopping buttons as well, since it's an I-12 start and the vast majority of your transition attacks are in that -3 to -1 range on block, so you can beat a lot of things with just those swipes. However, they can just as easily hop kick that, so again, considerable risk if you read it wrong. This is largely the line that you have to walk when you play with this stance. If you land your transition attack, you're looking at considerable plus frames and can probably run a real mix-up since you have threats like bear stance down forward 1-1 and down forward 2 to stop buttons. Back to 1 bear stance is +8 on hit, for example, so they can't beat that out with standard attacks. But except for perhaps up forward 1+2, if your transition move gets blocked, you'll have to make a big read to get anything going. The biggest helper you have is to mix up really well how often you're transitioning. Bear stance transitions are thankfully very smooth and ambiguous, so your opponent can't really tell if that's what you're going to do until you've already done it, which means that if they're going to try to interrupt you, they have to make that decision early. We mentioned this with back 1 and essential moves, but since you don't have to transition, you can use that to bait a response and then punish. Overall, bear stance isn't a stance you can abuse, but pick your moments wisely and you can definitely get some mileage out of it. Bears are an interesting case study because they present a conundrum of sorts. They have a lot of solid fundamental tools that you'd want a character to have, but simultaneously carry weaknesses that directly negate some of that. For instance, punishing is extremely important in Tekken, and they have some great punishers, down forward 2-1 and back forward 2 being particularly good for whiff. However, in order to whiff punish, you have to create the whiff, which can be really tough for them since they're big and have a terrible backdash. You'll notice that you'll still lean heavily on down forward 2-1 and back forward 2, but you don't have the movement or evasion tools to set whiff traps like most other characters can. Another example, bears have some great pokes in down back 2, down back 3, down forward 4, down forward 2, down back 1, forward 1, and so on, but you're not going to have an I-13 mid poke. Your best low in terms of frames has terrible range, your toe kick is awful, and so on. Also, their short legs and forward-leaning stance can cause some spacing issues for your opponent, but their bigger body means many characters have special bear-specific combos to get extra damage or set nasty traps. So what all of that means is that most bear players will play a very simple style and try to utilize fundamentals in a way that you might with any strong fundamental character like Kazumi or someone like that. Use a lot of down back 2 to try to get them ducking, lots of back 1 and some mid pokes like down forward 2, then occasionally make a big mid read with down forward 2-1, forward 1+2, etc. Also sprinkle in some bear stance to get a little crazy and keep your opponent honest. But you'll have to accept that bears are just inherently riskier than a lot of other characters. So don't get overly complicated with your game plan and really lean on those essential tools. As always, we'll start by recommending Applay. It's the best quick info resource out there. Once you start to get comfortable with Tekken and you want to pick up a character on the fly, there's nothing better than this. So only one recommendation for this guide. Not that there aren't any others, but bears are hard to win with and only one player has gotten close to sniffing a TWT championship, and of course Korea's Rangchu is not only that person, but he also took home the prize. In any case, being just one of the best in the world in general, he's a good watch for any character he decides to play, but thankfully you'll find plenty of bear matches to check out. Lastly, definitely don't consider this list as final as I just mentioned. There's certainly more than just Rangchu. Just understand that bears aren't super popular, so don't expect to find tons out there. Still, if you search around, you'll certainly find more. This brings us to the end of our guide. Again, bears have a surprising amount of strong fundamental tools along with solid linear reach, which helps them play the prototypical Tekken turtle style. But like we mentioned, you're going to have to handle a bunch of quirky weaknesses, so really dial up the footsies and snag those wins. I wish you the best of luck in your training. And with that, thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications here on YouTube so that you get alerted when a new video drops. Twitch and Twitter links are also down below. Lastly, huge thank you to our patrons. The more support we have, the more resources we can devote to channel content. So again, I can't thank everyone enough for considering supporting the Patreon. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.